South Africa free, Mr. Botha? How many more must die? How many more, Mistress Thatcher? How many more must die? How many more, Mr. Reagan? How many more must die for their dignity? Well, how many more before you set South Africa free? Demand, I quote, is simply one man, one vote. Today is just a short fuse away from a total confrontation between the black and white man. We want with freedom, may people say. They have made it very plain. No more turning back again. Freedom is the only answer. No compromise, no surrender. Lord, I see it dead in South Africa. Help we, Father, help we. How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die for their liberty? Lord, how many more before you set South Africa free, Mr. Botha? How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die for their liberty? Lord, how many more before you set South Africa free, Mistress Thatcher?
Yes, indeed. Pleasant good night to all and sundry. When Trinidad and Tobago will be set free? That is the supplement, or I shouldn't say supplement, but certainly the replacement story as far as this song is concerned. When will Rowley and the PNM set Trinidad and Tobago free? They have captured government. They have, of course, exhibited a bizarre sense of morality, ethics, and resource distribution, contrary and total betrayal of the social contract that was entered into back in 2015. A pleasant good night to all and sundry. This is the Corridor Transformation, your host, Lennox Smith.
How many more must die? How many more? Mistress Thatcher? How many more must die? How many more? Mr. Reagan? How many more must die for their dignity? Lord, how many more before you set South Africa free?
Yes, indeed. Once again, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry. Yes, indeed. It is the corridor transformation. And of course, you may be wondering what that animation is doing in the back there. Well, it demonstrates not just another pending catastrophe, disaster, policy displacement, and of course, misappropriation. And of course, adding to the multiple and monolithic lies that were told to us, and the difficulty with accepting what is being purported to be government and governance in this country based on lies, is that the administration, the current Rowley administration, seem to be oblivious, have no compunction, have no moral and ethical value or standard to tell the truth in very simple circumstance. That which you are viewing at this point in time represents the galleon passage. Yes, the galleon passage, as of course indicated by Rowley, to be used as a sub-regional, in terms of CARICOM, ferry that will ply among, more than three among, two between. So we say among Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados in the first instance, to ostensibly carry cargo of an agricultural nature, according to Rowley, other goods and services, and of course, people. To these initial three participating Caribbean community entities or territories. But the story cannot end there. Rowley cannot find an opportunity to again not account to the people, to engage in, of course, in what is called sophistry or specious delivery to the people, and not, of course, accounting forthrightly, frontally, and honestly. The man is so damn dishonest that he does not know the meaning. It does not occur in the vocabulary or the dictionary of the PNM and Rowley in particular, because you cannot tell me that the cabinet doesn't know what the historical connection to the galleon passage and what was told to us as for its purpose. You cannot tell me that the cabinet doesn't know. It's only the apologists and those who are brain dead. You know what I say those who are brain dead will not know, particularly when they are PNM blindly focused, playing they have on blinders, and they don't know what the reality is. Well, let us tell them tonight. Let us tell them tonight, because apart from how many more must die, literally, in terms of the COVID, over 5,000 and counting, because we still have, in recent times, they say 5 more deaths to add to that, over 5,000 already, in the peak or in the, what I consider to be the heydays of the virus. Quite apart, of course, from the over 500 to 600 a year being murdered in this country. How many more must die? How many more must die? And if you want to consider economic debt and financial emaciation, getting thin, getting, of course, nowhere, not being able to provide a meal on the table for your family and yourself because there is no work. That too I consider to be in the category of how many more must die. But in this case, it is an indirect debt. It's an indirect debt. It's an indirect dying. It is, of course, an oblique dying. But the fact of the matter is that it contributes. It contributes. So we have a debt as far as the COVID is concerned, debt as far as murders are concerned, debt as far as the economy and its indirect contribution to debts. And of course, we have debts as a consequence of the pain, agony, trauma, and psychological instability, imbalance of those who would have been summarily dismissed from government institutions such as Petrotrid, Tyranny, 1975 Limited, the Shagaramas Development Corporation. Yes. And of course, those contracted, whether it's at the level of the National Apprenticeship Program or at the level of respective ministries and or institutions attached, or should I say state agencies attached to the various ministries, and they provided an expectation to contracted employees, but dismiss them summarily, whether they're a term or at the end of their term in terms of the contract or just before the end of the contract, some of whom will not have been getting compensation for that act. Because Dr. Rowley has been on public record saying that not a gazetted, understand what he's saying, not a gazetted public servant has been dismissed. What do you think he means by that? It's obvious. If there are gazetted public servants, then there are non-gazetted public servants. So he's trying, of course, to play smart with foolishness. He's trying, of course, to use what is commonly called not just hyperboles, not just obfuscations, but with all specificity, he is using, of course, semantics, playing the ass with words. Semantics. Semantics. Because there would have been thousands of persons who would have had expectations because different ministries and or state agencies would have employed them under contract. Usually it's about 3 years for the maximum, as we have seen in other instances, such as the stint of the acting commissioners of police in the past. And even, of course, no, I think acting commissioners, they get a yearly stint. But of course, full-fledged commissioners, as Gary Griffith was, 3 years. But that group of individuals would have had expectations because for many years under the UNC and Kamala Prasad Bisesa, even though that program existed, they would have been automatically renewed. because the Kamala Prasad Misasa and the UNC administration recognize the sensitivity and the abject need for those who are prepared to subject themselves to a contractual arrangement. And while, of course, the salary, the rewards might have been higher, but the benefits in terms of long-term attachment would have been deducted or reduced or non-existent. So to compensate for that, terms and conditions, in other words, that will generate longevity and therefore stability. What you have is that contracted workers got a little more than the gazetted public servants. But those are the ones that were part and parcel of the hatchet job of the PNM and caused Rowley, of course, to distinguish between gazetted workers and non-gazetted workers, but utilizing the term gazetted workers only to appear or to satisfy or to generate a soft landing, make it more palatable for the non-esoteric Trinbagonian citizen or anyone listening to that hogwash. Built into it is that those that are not gazetted, meaning that contracted workers, were summarily dismissed. It's not waste time. And he cannot hide behind the term gazetted when there are persons that were employed with the government, that why they were not gazetted, meaning that they are not permanent employees. That is what he is referring to. There are those that are temporary or have been contracted and have been dismissed. Dismissed. I trust that you understand the difference. And I say so because this government has a proclivity to try to, of course, use, as I said, semantics and play with words to deceive and to engage in a kind of what I consider to be platitudinous verbalization that at the end of the day, under critical examination, you will notice that they were always designed with a sinister motive. A sinister motive, and usually the results would be the antithesis of what we're being told. And don't tell me you don't understand what I'm talking about, because only for Christmas it occurred. And just before Christmas it also occurred. For Christmas, the public servants were told that they will get their monies before Christmas. For Christmas. And of course, the usual self-righteous indignation when it could happen, or somebody else caused it. You're lucky they didn't say it's the UNC. You're lucky they didn't say it's Kamala Prasad Misasa. You're lucky. So, not wanted to sound not just ridiculous, not just as lunatics in public office, they decided, of course, to shift responsibility and put the blame on public servants at the highest level. And in this case, of course, the major victim of that kind of obfuscation and sophistry and, of course, duplicitous behavior is that of the permanent secretary that was in the Ministry of Education when Rowley came in public and said that he said that nobody will get, or it would be impossible for public servants to get, of course, their monies before Christmas. And Rowley demonstrated a choleric disposition, not dissimilar, or put another way, typical of what Manning described as being, of course, a raging bull, all of which were theatrics. All of which were theatrics. All of which were histrionics, meaning that he was just playing and that is normal for him. He knew fully well that it was not accomplishable. And then, at the end of it all, the truth came when thousands of public servants did not get their monies before Christmas. And Imsbert, of course, pulling up the rear and not to be outdone, he said that no uncertain to 5%, or should I say, he gave a number, in fact. He said 35,000 are to be paid, but 5,000 will not be paid. To me, that's a far, far cry. A far, far cry from saying that public servants will be paid before Christmas. Not for one moment. You must feel comfortable or comforted that 30,000 would have gotten their pay, if at all that materialized at all. But let's go straight, of course, to the lines when, of course, we will hear from you. Pleasant good night. Yes, indeed. A pleasant good night. Welcome. Welcome. A pleasant good night. Pleasant good night. Pleasant good night. Welcome. Pleasant good night.
Hello, good night.
Yes, good night. Welcome. Go ahead. I'm hearing you loud and clear. I'm hearing you loud and clear. Pleasant good night. All right, we lost that one. Let's go again. Let's go again. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Mr. Lennox, and good all night. Your listeners.
Yes, good night to you.
On the World Wide Web.
Yes.
Uncle Lennox, you forget that what they do, the BWIA workers, the Sugar Feed Center, and the Aripo farmers farm from the Ministry of Agriculture, the port workers, in the name of divestment. And when they come now and they do the mischief with National Quarry, then they come down now and they see the whole sort of thing with Joala. They move him for their own personal gains. There's more lies and more lies again. And then all the little desalination plant they had all over Maruga and the coast to produce water for the people in the villages. They mash up all those things. Yeah? And when Rowley come now and mash up OAS for the highway, yeah? And they say that they bankruptcy and mash it up to give his friends and them. And then you've seen where they're making the mischief and they're saying how, what, they're not gazetted. So he just wanted to hoodwinking. And it's have more where you could see that the government printry workers with them. That is the workers of the ministry with them going. The TSTT workers, when it was telco, what to do with the decimated to give the Korean, the Thailand people and them. They mash up TSTT and telco. Then they come now and they mash up WASA. They do it the same thing. And look at it. So Rowley come and look what he do with TNTech. He closed down a generating plant for the interest of what? Then Caridox workers. Then you're the hospitality people in Shagaramas. Then when he come now and he had everything to do. He come now and the public servants when the Ministry of Health, he moved them to the RHAs and them, the PNM and them moved them to the RHAs. So you can see all he talking and what he doing is making mischief. And the Guardian passage is just a mama guy to say that when they go to Guyana, it sinks somewhere in waters and they make a reef. It's just he jump up and saying that he going to authorize it that he gonna give ships. Yeah? What ship he gonna do? What shipping line? We can even have a good shipping line from Point Distance to Port State, the water taxi. Yeah? So Mr. Lennox, good work what you're doing with the people in Amanto and keep the fight alive. And let's rally to get the people to unite. Have a nice night.
Yes, indeed. And that is what I consistently say I love about this program. Here it is. I just had to introduce the topic. And look how much details, some of which I and all would have forgotten. That, of course, was mentioned there. And I trust that you are taking notes because it is about 20 institutions that would have been subjected, of course, to the hatchet job, meaning that the displacement, losing their jobs, closed down because of Rowley and his government. So you understand now why he would use the term, gazetted workers, because he knows that a substantial amount of persons from the various state enterprises and the institutions of the government under the state, under the management of the government, the party that is in office, a criminal enterprise called the PNM, using, of course, obfuscation and, of course, semantics in order, of course, to placate, to make you none the wiser because of the use of the words. And I don't have, of course, to go further because the last caller, put it in perspective, and I want to thank him. And that is the kind of information that is required now so people can not only be saturated and feel filled and, of course, intellectually stimulated, but most importantly is that you are motivated to go to the polls and tell these vipers, get your ass out of office because you have betrayed us. And it's only deception after deception. Every single thing that they said that Trinidad and Tobago ought to benefit from sandals come right back to, of course, TSTT and, of course, that so-called purchase from Massey Communications of their cable system, all of which turned out to be a blatant and extremely hollow and devastating potential and real consequence for Trinidad and Tobago. I want to thank the caller. Well done. And those of you who have additional information, here is the place to be. Here's the place to be so that we inform not only the East-West corridor, so they know that Rowley and they see them as a vote bank, a bank where not only they believe elusively, of course, and delusionally that they can rely on for votes, while at the same time providing in exchange pain, ache, agony, drudgery, economic decadence, and personal disaster and degradation. Personal disaster and degradation. And we have to, of course, acknowledge, because that is the experience. So we have to acknowledge. There can be no greater experience than, there can be no greater education than experience, especially when it is personal. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Yes. Yes, hello, good night, Lennox Smith.
Good night to you as well.
I like how you put the map for them to see everything, because
yes,
it has people
because
that
of your idea, because of your idea. Is you giving me the idea?
Thanks, Lennox. Yes. Because when they're talking about war, country, all kind of thing, they show map. So we're dealing with map, Lennox.
That's
nice,
right.
Man. So they see in the distance. But what
That's
I
right.
want to say is with this soca boat they have there, this boat didn't have no bow, you know. And it's in the Atlantic Ocean, it reaching not so Lennox.
That's right. That's
When it
perfectly
leave
the
the Gulf,
Atlantic. Look at there.
it going and sail in that heavy water there to go Guyana. And this is a bowless boat. Outside they have plenty swell. And you see by that serpent mouth, when it reach there, you go hear the shout. They will come back and tell me when they go in this cargo boat. Here now, these people wicked, they hear Rowley guns. Oh gosh, it's sickening. 24 hours. I couldn't imagine it so much time, you know. I say it would have been a little 16 hours or so, but it's 24 hours. Ay, ay, ay. They will hardly get passengers, right? I I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say again and was speechless. Lennox, I will see how I could call in again. I
Yes,
learn
indeed.
speechless.
Yes,
Okay,
indeed. So, the last caller, of course, has loosened the ethos, the purpose of tonight's exercise, because I started with saying, how many more must die? How many more must die? And of course, I related, of course, to that, what I consider to be animated video on screen. And since, of course, the last caller has hastened my position in terms of how does death relate to that particular incident, well, yes, the caller did what I would have done and had to do, was to explain. So yes, the Galleon Passage, totally in the Atlantic Ocean, between Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados. You've seen it there animatedly. And exposed, of course, to the Atlantic Ocean. You see the Atlantic Ocean spinning there in the animation. And you see, of course, at the top, the heading of the Galleon Passage just shaking. You could, of course, conclude visually and intellectually. You don't have to experience what will be happening on that sailing. You see, it is important that you understand what Rowley and they are trying to avoid you knowing by engaging that particular boat. You see, the cost of maintenance of these vessels are very high. But you have 4 passenger vessels right now on the Seabridge, the AP, the Spirit, the AP James, the Spirit, and of course the other Tobago boat. And then you have, of course, the Galleon Passage. 2 boats, while not ideal, but will be sufficient for the Tobago, Port of Spain route. 2. 3, of course, will ensure that you can, of course, on a timely basis, not that it cannot happen on a timely basis with 2 boats, but 3 boats means that you will be much more efficacious and the disruption will be almost nil in terms of passenger movement and goods movement. But you still have, of course, only the Cabo Star that moves the heavy load, heavy lifting. But of course, the other vessels will be deployed to move lighter items, basic hardware, and of course vehicles, etc. They will be able, of course, to carry to Tobago and back to Trinidad. So it is clear that the accident, the unplanned notion, and obviously presented or proposed by Trinidad, that there should be a ferry service for CARICOM, and according to Rowley, deceptively, not for the Barbadians or the Guyanese, because they are going to benefit. The boat is owned by Trinidad, but it's to deceive Trinidadians and Tobagonians, telling us that he is so CARICOM oriented that a proposal for a ferry between Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados in the initial stage, in the sub-region or the group of territories in the beginning, because of the need for that kind of heavy lifting transportation, Trinidad and Tobago is prepared, of course, to provide the galleon passage. But I want to tell you, he must explain what has happened to the port in Toco. He must tell us what has happened to the bridge, Seabridge, that is between Toco and Tobago. Because when the galleon passage was formally presented to the population, it was clear that because of its size and length, it was unsuitable to, of course, take the journey on a consistent basis through the Bocas to Tobago and back. And then they came up with the idea, not that they have wasted our money once again, not that they have been engaged in profligacy, corruption, and nepotism, and of course, an attempt, of course, to further raid the treasury and deplete our resources. But they came up with the idea, and he went in Sangre Grande on the twilight or on the last meeting of the 2020 elections of the PNM, and promised the people of that area and the nation that they will engage in the construction of that port in Toco, because there were criticisms that the galleon passage is unsuitable to take passengers on a consistent basis from Port of Spain to Scarborough through the Bocas. Understand that. You owe us an explanation, my friend. Or should I say my erstwhile friend? Or should I say my blatant and unadulterated enemy? Enemy not just of myself, but of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You need to tell us why it is and how come the galleon passage is now being deployed for this Caribbean ferry initiative, or CARICOM ferry initiative, tri-nation ferry, without you telling us what is going to happen with the port in Toco as bandied about? Or is it that it will go the faith, it will ultimately find itself in the same category, in the same area as the promise made that Petrotrin will not be closed, as the galleon passage makes its respective journeys, and the difficulty associated with why it is that we were not told what will happen to the Toco port, Rowley, and the government at large. Why? And therefore one can only conclude that it's because the present bridge, the Seabridge, has an overkill, too much boats now, and that they will not be pursuing the Toco port initiative, having regard to the promises made, similar, of course, to the objective of Sandals and what it was supposed to do, bringing, of course, $500 million to the coffers. Not an iota, not a cent. Similar, of course, to the promise made that there will be no property tax as far as a PNM Rowley administration is concerned. In addition, of course, to the fact that they said that they will not, of course, impose, or should I say reduce subsidies so that you have an increase exponentially of prices across the board, and therefore the cost of living and the continuation of the rise in poverty as the people, of course, either be undernourished because they have to be eclectic and be more selective, and therefore the food that they choose, it may be as a result of lower price as opposed to quality, which of course you may have to pay a higher price, quite apart from the massive layoffs that has taken place in the public sector for non-gazetted public sector workers. Let me repeat, non-gazetted. Rowley is too damn dishonest. And we need, of course, to put things in perspective. It is not by accident he's saying gazetted, you know, because he knows the evil that he has done. He has that predilection for evil. It appears that it is in his DNA. Some say that he's a product of rape. They say he's a product of rape. What I know, that he is a rapist and a pedophile. That is what I know. Some say that he's a product of rape, and we heard that in Parliament, of all places, when, of course, Vanilla Topping, who I consider to be a heroine, who one day must be rewarded for the peradventure, for the insight, for her warnings to Trinidad and Tobago. If this viper called Rowley should anyway be closer to the office of a prime minister, what are the possibilities with a totally deranged, and now we know, recidivist or multi-sociopath, a multiple sociopath, a recidivist, a sociopath, over and over and over. He seemed to lie down and conjure up only evil, and then take our resources for his own aggrandizement. And we saw it from the beginning with, of course, the what? Yes, the Casabon painting. But he told us belt tighten, and he slackened his belt because he liked painting. We saw where he has deprived young people or school children of less meals in school, and take away, of course, the book grant and laptops, etc. And his priority has been to repair and to rehabilitate the Magnificent Seven for no reason, for no economic or appreciative, sociologically and psychologically benefited to the people, because Trinidadians are not appreciative of the finer arts such as painting. He, as this Oreo Trinbagonian, as this Oreo black man, white inside but black outside, he appreciates it. And don't tell me I know what I'm talking about, before I bring the blasted tape, because it was his wife who said that he loves painting, but he can't paint. And all over the damn house, whether, of course, at our expense, our home that we provided for the prime minister, whosoever that person is, he has painting all over it, according to his wife. According to his wife. Don't get me vexed, you apologists. You want to know where I get the information from? His wife said it on an interview on public TV. Yes, indeed. But the first thing he will do is take away laptops, that Neanderthal, from the children. Its priority to repair, of course, those colonial buildings around the savannah. And then has the audacity, the temerity, the gall, the effrontery, and the boldfacedness to put desperados down on Nelson Street and say that because it is circular in terms of its route, people will come up Western Queen's Park Savannah, look at QRC, look at the Archbishop House, look at Mayflower, look at, of course, the other building that is supposed to be allocated or be used by the Anglican bishop, and then the Whitehall, and then Stolmeyer Castle, and then as you head north, you see, of course, the President's House, and maybe a twinkling of the Prime Minister's residence, and then you keep going east, and then turn south around the savannah, and therefore on Queen's Park East, down Charlotte Street, and then turn, of course, east into Piccadilly Street, and then turn south into Nelson Street off Piccadilly Street. And just after the corner of Queen and Nelson Streets, Desperados has their facility there. A facility, this man so wicked, knowing full well of drive-by shootings as head of the National Security Council, he can't say he don't know. Only if it is convenient, he will say that he doesn't know. I suppose it will be convenient now to say that he doesn't know. But I say, he's a blasted liar, you know. Drive-by shootings. And of course, the battles, the gun battles that take place in and around that block. And Rowley will put there not even a protective, as ineffective as it may be, but not even a protective peripheral wall to protect those inside. In other words, he didn't even put a brick wall so that at least people will have difficulty in firing their guns into the compound of Desperados. What he put there? He put a sophisticated chain link wire fence. You what I say? I say he put with vertical, of course, vertical, should I say stanzas, vertical poles, very thin vertical poles. But you could see right through. You could see right through. And bullets, therefore, who could be easily discharged inside of that compound. And that wicked man give Despers that and telling them it's the best thing since sliced bread, the arguably best steel man in the world. And I say to you, the leadership of Desperados, shame on you. I say to you, you should be calling out now as to why and what you have done to the PNM to deserve that piece of punishment as they, of course, deliver you in hell. They deliver you to hell on earth on Nelson Street. That's what they have done. And don't tell me that you don't have that concern. Don't tell me that you are comfortable. You're wicked if you say that. And you are guilty of subjecting your membership to mass suicide. Mass suicide is just a matter of time. This will be the first carnival coming up that they will be there. But already, while it's under construction, drive-by shooting took place between, of course, the Muslim and the Rasta city. Dichotomy gangs at the corner of Queen and Nelson Streets. And at least 1 or 2 persons died there as a result. And for good measure, they identified, of course, the vehicle that was used for that drive-by shooting. And guess what? It was found at Low Place, not too far from Desperately Crescent, where desperados came from, on the hill. Understand what is happening here. It's murders after murders. This is genocide. This is a genocidal government. When one looks at all of the potential and real and practical and statistics coming out of the consequence of the premature killing of our people, we have to be concerned. And it brings me now, of course, to the concern of the caller with respect, of course, to the Galleon Passage. It means, therefore, with the rough seas that is associated with the Atlantic Ocean, and you only have to go on the North Coast to understand the size of the waves, and it's crashing on the sand and beaches of the northern side of Trinidad and Tobago, which of course is the windward side, the Atlantic Ocean side. And I fear that Rowley, in an attempt, of course, to domestically appear to have found a way to explain away why the Galleon Passage was not in use and will not be in use. He seemed to have found a way and capitalized on it by talking about the Tri-Nation ferry deploying, of course, the Galleon Passage. Understand that. And therefore, because of its unsuitability for the journey between Port of Spain through the Bocas to Tobago, do you think that, or can it not be logically deduced and one can conclude that it's just a matter of time, as the caller rightly said, that Galleon Passage between Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados could expose passengers and goods to absolute and total disaster at sea? Think about it. Think about it. And therefore, another case of death, of murders, and of destruction of human beings and goods, physical goods. That is the reason why I thought I should raise that issue tonight. And I want to thank, of course, the recommendation, because I had to think and be creative in order, of course, to produce that animation where, of course, the Galleon Passage is moving from Guyana into Trinidad and to Barbados. And, of course, the Atlantic Ocean is the only place that it will be, of course, moving into, except, and even worse, when it gets into the Bocas, maybe to pick up passengers in Port of Spain, as the case may be. Yes, indeed. These people are simply evil. President, good night. Welcome to the
night, Good night, Mr. Lennox.
Good night to you.
And I don't want to forget also too, he promised Labrador people the plywood section where it is after 8 years. Where it is. You hear? Yes. 8 years now, you promised them the plywood factory. So I'm going to build up a plywood factory for them. Right? And they vote for him in 2015, they vote for him in 2020. That's why they're getting nothing now. They had to eat the pitch lake. And anybody want to come up and phone and talk to me now and tell me that is why they're suffering now in Labrador. Where the plywood factory promised them, and much more too.
Yes, you're quite right. You're quite right, ma'am. And we cannot fail to expose and to treat with that matter, because that plyboard issue, and of course, while Labre and Point Fortin will be reeling from the closure of the Petrotrin, some 65,000 persons in the southwestern peninsula. There are other disconcerting and, of course, previous indicators of the insincerity or the blatant and unadulterated incompetence and the lack of civility by this government, compassion and well thought out programs and policies. You see, Labre was, of course, promised to, of course, the construction of the first ever in Trinidad and Tobago attempted that platform, that BP, that drilling platform that BP initiated for construction at the Bryden Estate. And of course, it was specifically designed, according to Rowley and them, opportunistic as it was, but very telling in terms of the indictment and the fact that they had to pay for the opportunistic fervor. Opportunistic fervor. Yes. When the Angeline platform was being constructed, and there was, of course, workers' strike, and they said that they will not, of course, go back to work, and BP, of course, was concerned about it. All that time, Rowley and they went up, he and Young went up, he said to the boardroom, he liked to talk in this hyperbolic and bombastic and arrogant, and of course, with all the body language and the fervor of authority, that indolent, that nincompoop, that bald-headed political kobo. Yes, bald-headed political kobo is the first man I know that has a natural bald head that he wants everybody to believe it is artificial. I'm going to bring to you a picture of Rowley when he was much younger. He was generating baldness since then. And I'm sure that he would have been engaged in episodes of trepidation, fright, when he look in a mirror and see himself, whether it's morning, night, or midday, or in bright artificial lights. So he took up the hairstyle of cleaning and shaving his head so that he could mask. He could, of course, render incognito his natural bald head. Just imagine that face with, of course, a head of hair similar to that of, let's say, Wade Mark or Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, who wear theirs with pride and authority. But he wants to make a natural bald head look artificial. Let's go to the lines as usual, as our external contributor take the podium or take the mic. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
A pleasant good night to you and on the top.
Yes.
Who they vex with each other from small.
We want to get your contribution, boy. Do something.
The man yes. Vexed because, he find we shouldn't be greeting each other. Those when they're going to people's house, you greet them, but we all. Anyway, I thought
Oh my goodness, boy. I know your contribution is significant. What is happening here?
Are you hearing me, Lennox?
No, I'm hearing you now. You have to go all over again. Yes, yes. No, you I
okay,
heard
you
who,
hearing me?
Yes, yes. Go ahead now. Yes.
All right. He said that we have no contribution to make, only sounding like fools telling everybody good night. But I know when you're going to people's home, you say good night to them. And I am telling you good night, and I'm telling all the chatters good night. Anyway, Lennox,
Yes.
I totally agree with you that that man from Desperados have no shame. Hello?
Yes, go ahead. I'm hearing you loud and clear now. Yes.
Yeah, right. He has no shame, Lennox. You think he didn't want to rock the PNM boat and refuse when Rowley put them down there? I mean, he took them from a good panyard, and that's why he put them. But then we like it so PNM doing us all kind of thing, and we afraid to open we mouth. You understand? We afraid to rock the boat. Let us imagine we have more murders than days. More murders than we have days. And yet still people vex because Kamala and them had that crime talk Monday night. Lennox, if you know how that crime talk aggravated people. Because you see what happened. PNM didn't think, Rowley didn't think the kind of people that attended that crime talk was going to show up. He was shocked at it. He thought nobody would have attended, and the kind of people that attended. But people are fed up of the crime situation. They are not doing any early praying and behind sleeping. And he have pep. He have nothing to say. And we are at the mercy of the criminals. Imagine Ian Allen criticizing Kamala and them for that crime talk. Talking about what she want to call a SOE, that's not the answer, and give him 6 months, he could solve it. Solve what? Gary, who's more experienced, couldn't do it. Everybody have the answers now, but when time for them to step up to the plate, nobody's doing it. And I appeal to Mrs. Pasabi says to them, don't stop the talks. Continue with it. And who vex? And Rowley say, who dead? Well, who vex? And who don't like what it is going on, that's this. Don't attempt it. But once you see, some of us can make it here, Lennox, we are going. Because it concerns all of us. And I waited to see whether protest is really cold. All the talkers, if they're coming out to walk. Waited to see Lennox. Lennox, thanks a lot for listening to me, and have a good night.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Let them eat their heart out. They could jump high, they could eat your heart out. Reality is reality. And the fact is that we are facing a failed state scenario. Mogadishu or Somalia style. Having regarded to the international unenviable position of Trinidad and Tobago as the sixth place not to be in this world because of crime and criminality. And then very recently, imagine what we consider officially or unofficially the education capital, maybe of the Caribbean, but certainly of Trinidad and Tobago. Talking about St. Augustine, where the University of the West Indies resides. And many, of course, tertiary, primary, and secondary institutions deliver their their material to students. Imagine that St. Augustine has been placed on the United States advisories against Trinidad and Tobago for a place not to visit. You can imagine that? Everything with this man, this government, is the first time, but always of a negative nature. So the first time, we have what we consider to be a very well-to-do, well-developed part of the East-West corridor and the country, a place where educational pursuit is one of par excellence in terms of the institutions. And we are advised, or we are told that, of course, nobody who visits Trinidad must come or must go there because of crime and criminality. Wow. First time. We're going to get back, of course, with the first time scenario. I'm hearing a phone call, but it appears that might have been the wrong number. Why it is that I'm not getting it on the system? Caller, let me take the phone. Let me take the phone because I'm not seeing it on the system. Pleasant good night. Welcome.
Do you know I'm going to be 79 years in May? I don't come out and no way beside the grocery and buy home. I don't go. It's about 30 years going down. You understand?
Yes.
Look at the country, how it come to. So every evening, 4:45, she come in online and talk about the rapid rail. And because who made the first was Rohan gets to the place in Italy, not too far from me, 2 footsteps. Do not go no way. Go right in the mall in 500. Look at the place where you come to. But that man didn't care nothing. Man sacrificed the country for some time. God want to flow and flow. To restore him every evening, call show, show a show. You understand? We couldn't invoke me for the rapid rail. How much money Rohan did for the intersection? We're not hearing about that. All he said, we had to pay for that. He said, yeah, get to pay for that. But everything closed up like a copybook. You understand? But everything will come in a time.
That's right.
And let me tell, I want to tell Mr. Cruz. Is never identify myself. We cannot be anytime we make a Facebook. For the intersection. Out of the country was making study. When you study, the or the bridge. Where that money going? Where that money going? You understand? When you ask calling him and you're calling, Rohan Suleiman, he said, I ain't get no money for the intersection.
As yet. He's saying get yet. Yes.
But really, I always say it in my last words, God don't sleep. Rowley said, we country for the devil. always appreciate your contribution. Always be number one on this program and on the program. Good night, love. Health and strength and prosperity, and take care.
Yes, indeed. And these are realities. I don't study those persons who may be on other frequencies attempting to defend the indefensible. The very term itself, indefensible, speaks volume. It's only somebody with cognitive and intellectual, what I consider to be rot. Cognitive and intellectual rot. That state. And calling themselves, of course, a talk show hoax. Hoax. Because it's only hoax. You know what a hoax is, of course? Something that is absolutely not true. But, of course, they will bellow and they will project and they will, of course, vociferously defend with all of the, what I consider to be intonations that suggest not that they are convincing, but that they are stupid. Yes, indeed. That's what that has to be. Can be nothing else. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Welcome
Good
to the
night again,
corridor.
Mr. Lennox. And
Yes,
the hawks are them. Tell them this one. The forestry workers and them who they used to say about the park, they closed down. Camden Aviation School, they closed it down. UTT, they decimate it, they mash it up. The South Camp, UV campus, they leave it there in bush. And so let them know that for Lisas, steel mill, they leave it there to rotten. And a scrapyard, scrapyard dealers president, they're looking to run it and they get a proposal, they take it away from them. Tell them that is reality. So tell them the hoax and them when they want to talk and push the narrative of the slave master and as a slave catcher. Tell them, right, that is why today you're seeing that PTS can run efficient. And when the old age citizens and them go to the hospital, or the health centers and them, they close it down and they close in the health sector delivery. So tell the hoax and them, right, that tomorrow when they go to the public meeting and the crime symposium, work with the identification card to register as a harboring fugitive, because they will be harboring fugitive and wrongdoers. They are condoning crime in this country. Because what more can Rowley say? He lost popularity for whatever. Then the unions, he tried to mash up everybody and take away workers. Tell the slave catchers and them that when Lake Asphalt people was kneeling down on the foot and begging for the earnings, that they didn't get it is a PNM government. And when Limo went in Miami court and lie and perjure himself and come back here to say that to entrap and to espionage to lock up a politician for their own personal gain. When a member of parliament went to the great heavens with a yoke around the neck as a thief, so we can identify all the thieving and all the wrongdoing. And when they could give a company a gas deal to sign to produce to go to gas to liquid, and yet still is on a piece of paper and they could go to the bank for $35 million. Tell the hoax of them and those slave catchers that is corruption. And when a man can buy a watch for more than the money he's working for, and as a businessman and get approvals, that is misbehavior in public office. And when he can move an integrity commission who is doing the work fair and honest, and he corrupt pervert the course of justice, tomorrow they will be seeing the head of the kingpin of crime, the criminality, the man who in charge of criminality in this country. Because he does nothing, and if you can't do nothing, you are part of the problem. You become the problem. So what goes around comes around. So have a nice night.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I think it is appropriate now. But I want to say this before, of course, I invite you to take a look-see and a listen I listen attentively, of course, to experts. This is not Vikey Vike, of course. And tomorrow I will bring some excerpts from that crime symposium. And I'll also, of course, delve into the situation where this government has been so incompetent, impotent. It has literally collapsed. That, of course, we have to identify all those implosive scenarios that they attempted, of course, to perpetrate on the people for their political survivability. You know what I say? Their political survivability, because Rowley and they know their ass is grass, if not grasses. So they will engage. But even that has collapsed on them. And I'm talking, of course, about scenarios such as, of course, the Naikwan deal collapse. Naikwan collapse. You ever say? I said Naikwan collapse. Heritage collapse. The consequences of a Petrotrin closure that is plaguing the government of this country. In spite of all the talk about 800 million bullet payment. We examine that and we will go on because the latest is where they have been taken to court. They have been taken to court. The PSA take them to court on the question of 4%, and the Revenue Authority, Gary Griffith, take them to court, Bliss C. Prasad, for what they did illegally, unconstitutionally, by withdrawing, of course, that list in spite of the intervention of the head of the National Security Council. That has nothing to do with it. I'm talking about Rowley. And we can go on, of course. But that is tomorrow. Let us, of course, go straight to the line again. I will give you a little insight as to what is going to happen tomorrow. Press a good night.
Yes, Lennox, it's me again.
Yeah.
The part with Naikwan or Nikwan, that gas, the liquid plan.
Yes.
You know, they're suing them, the people who they're in company with. They're suing them.
Yes, I'm aware.
You remember that part?
Tomorrow. Yes, we do that tomorrow. Yes. I'll show them when nothing they plan against the people will work. That's the point I'm making.
Because it's who he's dealing with. They're laughing and skinning with him. And he's so deep in the brotherhood of wrongdoers, the mafia, that he can't come out. So it's them people who are living next door to we is who suing him. And they're not telling you the real owners of this thing where they're in company with. All this pipeline where they was fixing up and the men and them die in the pipeline. He could have get help from his partner and them next door, but he ain't get help. Right? Because it have plenty to hide. Up to now, you see the hiding. I tell you, they will never let us know. But we have to insist that we know about the deaths of these divers. Right? Your friend tell you anytime it have any disaster here, he's going to help you in disaster. Any disaster, he will help with disaster. He make a sign up thing with the security minister to guard the borderline and them. Look at how much guns coming in. And you're not talking about a place where there's traffic guns, which is next door to us. You're only blaming America. But I want the people at Trinidad and Tobago know this. Guns, they say coming in from America, and they will show you the guns marking and all of that from America. So they can't buy gun over there. They can't purchase gun from America. It has so much oligarchs living in Venezuela. Men, people who just purchase guns. They can't, all they don't think that just how here they have people who purchasing guns from the United States, that they don't have people purchasing guns and ammunition. This snake they have in the valleys, they call Gopi School. They have big trade with these boats we're going and coming to and fro from different parts of Venezuela on the eastern side of here. I will mention one, Tocopita. The governor, who is a woman for that side, she named call in the distribution of guns in these islands here in the Caribbean. Right? She named call with her next one where they want him 10 million out for he. His name is Diosdado Cabello. The general wanted for guns and arms trafficking, human trafficking, and you go in and sign paper where these set of criminal people say they helping you guard border. And all this going on inside of here, and you don't blame them at all for nothing. All you're talking is America, America, America. He don't say nothing about them again, Lennox. He not all the countries in Latin America, Central, just talk about this man and the people, the problems they're having in the country with these people. But he don't say a word about these people living inside of here where they're doing all kind of thing, all kind of thing, all kind of thing, and contributing to all kind of thing inside of here. Not a word again, Lennox. You notice that? He is saying nothing,
Of course, from
Well,
ever
I
since
tell
I
people
mentioned it like
they
last night.
have to get up and put their foot down with these people that are living inside of here now, If they don't put down their foot and make a strong stance, dog eat we supper. We can have nothing again for we inside of here after this 2024. Okay, Lennox, have a good night.
Yes, indeed. And of course, to reinforce that position of remaining definitely silent, or when he speaks, he doesn't speak, of course, objectively in Trinidad and Tobago's interest, because that's all we must concern ourselves with, the extent to which he has betrayed Trinidad and Tobago, and at every corner. His foreign policy on the question of Venezuela in the early days of the sanctions and the concern by the rest of the region for the destabilization of the region, are talking about this hemisphere, and of course more particularly South America, and of course the Caribbean as well, because Trinidad and Tobago has a substantial amount of Venezuelans that have migrated here, and to of course open up the borders after the Americans expressed their deep concern. It shows not just a knee-jerk response, but how inept and how lack of what I consider to be intellectual application for an appropriate policy in spite of your position. Because Rowley's position is his position, not Trinidad and Tobago's position. He was elected, however, to, of course, address Trinidad and Tobago's problem, but instead, he believes that the party he is head of, a criminal enterprise, and anything associated with it is premium, is premier, is superior to, of course, the interests of the people. That and a pink donkey. That and a pink donkey. He will regret. He will regret. Pink donkey. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
A pleasant good night, Mr. Lennox.
I
want to say good night, everybody. I want to say good night to everybody live, everybody in the chat, everybody reaching internationally. I ain't staying too long, Mr. Lennox. I just want to make a little point because I like the topic going on and I listen.
Yes.
People open your eyes and understand. When UNC was in power between 2010 and 2015, Trinidad and Tobago never had them kind of guns. Those guns are the newest guns on the market. So them guns and them could never come in when UNC them was in power. Them guns come in when PNM was in power. So people understand that. So all these propaganda they're spending, UNC is the problem and they causing that. No, them guns and them is the newest guns. You see them, you see all them videos on YouTube and all that with these guys and put it up. That's new guns. That coming in now. All right, Mr. Lennox, I'm not going to understand.
Yes, indeed. And my response, because I love to respond to people like yourself, because I think your observation prowess, your observation ability, I think, is well placed, and therefore that observation reminds me of persons who would, of course, try to generate square peg and wrong hole argument. Square peg and wrong hole logic. Square peg and wrong hole. Incongruent. And clearly, there is none as blind as he or she who refuses to see, even though they have 20/20 vision. And more significantly, of course, for such individuals, especially those talk show hawks and them. Hawks is that nobody could be a fool for you. They are fools for themselves. And you must not follow the blasted blind. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
Right, Lennox, how you going, boy?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right, man. Fighting up there.
Well, I see I'm trying to come over tonight and talking about the crime situation. It looks like it finally reached by the doorstep, because all this thing happening for 2 years now. Record murder rate and murders galore for this month, and it seemed to me them was quiet. But you see, when the business get affected, right, that is when they're rising up now. And the Prime Minister, who they say 125 days on,
in the last 8 years. Let's start. I'll take you from Chagramas all the way to Galiot.
Regarding that at all. And people are running roughshod in this country. According to the last Saturday, you seen some machine gun here, you see in a Rambo movie, and it's outside here for these gangsters to come and attack public with. I tell you, the police, I don't know what to do. You need a special spot to deal with these men, because these fellas, they are terrorists. They're running around this country, holding the public to ransom, right? And they're doing as they well please. You don't see how these fellas is entertaining here when they do any crime or murder. You ever think and wonder why and how that is happening? Yeah? You don't need a banana republic that could happen. You know, this place have so much cameras and all these other things here. There's so much police. And the traffic and all these other things will be taken place. And these men just disappear. Can't understand that the really good one was. It can't be shooting people and escape like that. It can't be something out of a magic show when these fellas do these things, right? And they had this one called Julia Deary, bumping chigum, like yesterday news, bringing Kamla, every damn day Kamla. I said that Johnson should be talking on the radio. Here after that name, Aruka, where they say teenagers. Talking foolishness, giving Kamla, giving Gary, not giving Johnny for murders and crime taken place. All the crime took place from 2010 to 2015, and that this BLM government can't deal with it. So what are they in office for 9 years? What are they doing in office if they can't deal with it? Them to get out of office if they can't deal with it, because they have record murders taking place under them, and these fools want them all this time to take place for the next 50 years. So wait for the whole of this country under answer for the next 50 years for them to take up it. The PLM have no answer to crime. They pattern criminal activities that are taking place in this country, because they know who Mr. Big and Mr. Right? And they don't want to deal with that. Have a good day, man.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, my friend. And of course, I think by now we need, of course, to consummate and to, of course, what I consider to be synthesize and to generate the conclusion of all what was said earlier and up to just now by the callers in terms of a synopsis, an appropriate synopsis for what is taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll go to former Minister Ramnarine to, of course, aid us with that position. But let's go to the lines first. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
So sorry, Mr. Lennox. I missed out one point I wanted to say. I'm going to say it quick.
Yeah, no problem. You go ahead, man.
So all this propaganda they see in UNC is the fault of this crime and all this. How much money Rowley spent to investigate UNC at ministers and people involved with UNC? If UNC was involved in bringing in them guns, PNM would have jumped and touched the sky, because they would have loved to get them in that corruption to jail them. So think about it, people. Look how much millions Rowley spent to investigate UNC. So if UNC was involved in bringing in this gun, you don't think PNM would have tried to catch them? They would have loved that. All right, Mr. Nels, look, don't understand.
Listen, Rowley's fake investigations is about trying to save face and somehow salvage his political debt. The man has been metamorphosized and the PNM into a political kobo, eating away at every carcass they see, hoping that some flesh, some sense will come their way, but all the time they have failed. A pleasant good night on every occasion.
Good night, Mr. Lennox. While same here again. This is my last time. I was hearing your people on your radio station, right? Saying that when we hear the program with Kamala, he say Rowley going to be for the next 5 years again. Tell him to get real now. If he say he has solution, why he don't bring it up? And only talking about numbers and solution. Tell Mr. X, get real. Right? He need to get real. This boy is, how should I say it? I can't put the word. How can I put it? Because what me, all he obsesses about Kamala. I don't hear nothing about Rowley. Right? If you have solution, right, and you went to the program or you listened to the program and you said that what you hear the Rowley going to be our next 5 years. But I want to ask Mr. X, with Kamala win election, are you going to live in Trinidad? Are you going to live in Trinidad? And you're going to be begging for a program? Or are you going to begging for this or that? That you're in a business? Come on, Mr. X. Whoever chin you up, right? Whoever chin you up, if you have solution, bring it up and say, Miss Kamala, XYD. Or you talk about numbers and you're talking about this and you talk about that and you talk about this. Come on, you're making it a waste of time. Right now, I feel you there in a toilet and you just have a diarrhea. You're flushing out yourself.
I hear you. And X deserves that. He deserves that because I mean, I've heard some hilarious things, not from him because I doesn't listen, because I believe that experience is the best teacher, and you can be as much curious as possible. I have had several encounters with persons when we formed the corridor transformation, this program, or indeed when we, of course, organize in the MLIO, the Mobile Laventille Improvement Organization, or when we organize, of course, the ad hoc committee for the eradication of crime in Laventille, or when, of course, we engage, of course, the Laventille for Laventillian initiative, and of course, when we unfold and delivered with tremendous impact, a saver for the PNM, who, of course, would want to damage anything that is of the people, for the people, and by the people, and making progress. And don't tell me that I'm talking here because I was a victim of their evil. No. And then who was subjected to similar evil more than people like Archbishop Barbara Gray Burke? And she, of course, excelled in spite of their efforts to try to dampen and to emasculate. Some went underground, like, of course, a Penny. I'm not talking about the political Penny. She cannot, of course, think as Lister Penny. Lister Penny dealt with the street children. Yes, indeed. And went under because of lack of funding from the PNM. She almost, of course, not, I should say almost, she was in fact prosecuted in the court for her concern for, as far as I'm concerned, for those children. Of course, the matter was dismissed. Matter was dismissed. And you have many others. Michael Morgan. I could give you stories about how these people are thought of by the PNM and the parliamentary representative, including myself, of course, which, of course, will be the subject of other. We have bottomless, just as how Rowley appear to have bottomless evil, we have bottomless positives and information to share with you that will ensure that evil cannot prevail over good. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Hello, welcome to the corridor. I'm not getting anything. That was one of the callers on one of the private phones. But let's go straight, of course, to Kevin Ramnarine, a former Minister of Energy in the UNC, who, of course, is an expert. He has been extremely successful as a minister in that regard. Let's go straight to the lines on the phone, of course. A pleasant good night. On my private phone. Pleasant good night. It's not loud. Why not let them call on my phone? You are not coming across. We have a difficulty with this phone. My assistant will tell you which phone to call if you cannot get to the phone that is on the system, so that we can share what you have to say with the international audience that is online at this time. Yes, indeed. So I was making the point. These sleepyhead, narcoleptic nincompoops at the helm of our affairs, the kinds sleeping, Rowley sleeping, all of which demonstrates that the Lord moves in mysterious ways, as wonders to perform. They have to get the hell out. But let's go to Ramnarine and hear the reality. And that will, of course, what I consider to be sum up, or will synthesize, or will summarize what the reality in Trinidad and Tobago is, in spite of Rowley and their monofocus on oil and gas. And when, of course, the funds comes, they don't focus on diversification. They focus on selling and lining their pockets and setting up people with major assets of the country, believing that they will be there forever. 2025 must come. It will be a long, hot 2024.
Let's talk about the energy sector's performance in the last 8 years. Let's start. I'll take you from Chaguaramas all the way to Galeota. Chaguaramas.
Yes, indeed.
Let's talk about Republic Bank closed down. Let's start
all over.
Sector's performance in the last 8 years. Let's start. I'll take you from Chaguaramas all the way to Galeota. Let's talk about the energy sector's performance in the last 8 years. Let's start. I'll take you from Chaguaramas all the way to Galeota. Let's talk about the energy sector's performance in the last 8 years. Let's start. I'll take you from Chaguaramas all the way to Galeota. Chaguaramas, Republic Bank closed down, Royal Bank closed down, Zanzibar closed down, Marcy stores closed down, all because of lower energy sector activity on the peninsula. We go down to Point Lisas, Mita closed down, MHTL M1 closed down, Yara ammonia plant.
All right. I will pause here and take the call on my phone. Yes, indeed. President, good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Mr. Smith. Great program as usual. I'm a first-time caller from Gasparillo.
All right. Thank you very much. Go ahead, make your contribution.
I just wanted to say that I'm so very happy that people are speaking out against this Mr. X. Mr. X has been playing a game, and he is hurting the UNC base by his utterances in that program. I think people should boycott that program.
All right.
Okay, because Mr. X has been making some damaging comments. He needs to get organized and get with the program. More people need to speak out. Mr. Amar needs to be very careful about the effect that this man is having on his program. I know several people who have already boycotted that program, and more people are going to do it, and we're going to campaign for it. Mr. X has been hurting the UNC.
All right, I will certainly, I've taken note, and I have my own comments. As I said, I don't listen because I don't think a person who, of course, is distant or put another way, as I would say, is a talk show hoax. A talk show hoax could deserve my ears or listening. But I take note of what you're saying, and I'm sure
he's an expert in everything. If people listen to him, he's an expert in everything. He's an expert in crime. He's an expert.
And could deliver nothing.
An expert in everything.
Yeah, and could deliver nothing.
With this man.
Yeah, and delivers nothing.
I am familiar with his type. These are the so-called independent. They are not independent. They are playing a game and supporting the PNM. That's what he's doing.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much as well. Thank you. You see, when I have to respond on a one-on-one, you see, I prefer to deal with these guys on a one-on-one because I have to ask them a very simple question. Simple question. When the PNM is in government, is it true or not that murders exponentially increase? What statistics you could bring to defy that? You see, you have to be able to not only be concerned about the misinformation and disinformation by persons who may have some opportunity to influence public opinion. But you must be able, of course, to fry them in their own oil, so to speak. So all I have to ask, if you are such a concern and you're saying that, of course, that the UNC cannot deal with the matter, but the PNM, suggesting that the PNM should remain there to continue with this chaos and madness and mayhem and, of course, total destruction and pain and ache and agony and trauma, then as one-to-one and on a statistical basis, you tell me, I would say to Mr. X, when the PNM is in government, is it not true that the murder rate increases exponentially? And if you only give me vex, I start, of course, to unleash the statistical realities for which he would have no response, except possibly to try to give me a Rowley, to give me a delusionary, and of course, some kind of square peg in round hole, asinine logic, which of course will not benefit his cause. That's all. That's just one area that I'm talking about. There are several others. But so I don't take them because I X out X. And of course, he's what? The X is the 24th letter of the 26th letter alphabet that we have, that we know of. Well, I want to say he's too low down to Z for me to be concerned. You know what I say? Just like Earl Christopher, too low down to Z, to last, in other words, for me to be concerned. So I will not be too perturbed with people, but I know that if you feel that kind of, should I say, public and talk show hoax should be derided, should be responded to, then by all means, and I'll defend your right, of course, to do so, just as how I will defend the rights of anyone to voice an opinion. But evil could never prevail over good. And if you don't make sense, if you are illogical, if you are a square peg in round hole activist, like so many of them, who of course preach the PNM illogic, you have to leave them alone. Leave them alone, and they will come home eventually, and they will collapse on their own speed or steam, so to speak. Professor, good night. Welcome. Pastor, good night. Welcome.
Good night, Mr. Ross.
Yes, good night to you.
And it's exactly, fall on the own way.
Yes.
And they'll come home.
Yes.
The tails behind.
That's right.
Now,
Eventually.
The nice thing about it, when a comment is made by these how to say, journalists and talk show hosts, he is trying to put the narrative so that when he can get a CETA contract and hoping that Rowley will take it in the fall. I only hope Mr. X know how to use PCB on his head, because the people that Rowley was around him, he had to use hydrogen peroxide on the body and PCB on the head. He had to be a certain color and a certain texture, because Rowley don't recognize anybody who talking deliver out to change the narrative. Because the price of cocoa today is very high worldwide, and Trinidad have none to supply. So what we will talk about, the weather. So when we talk about the weather, I'm not planting a tree to see if with generation or you want to get the harvest cocoa. This is the narrative, and that's why I label the slave catchers. And the slave catchers at work. And it's only good and healthy for the UNC-based supporters to understand what we have to deal with out there and what is the narrative. That is why our village council, our councillors, and our group in our area where we live, we have to be more vigilant and talk out and get everyone to unite and bring it to show them that the diversion and what is reality. Because apparently, those fellows of them who are talking and pushing the narrative, when a gang leader or a criminal element discharge a firearm in the public and hurt other people, that is within their own group, they're saying, so that is, let the fight and kill yourself. That don't affect us. But how it will affect us is when we go to canvas in deep areas. Is it safe for us to walk in their areas with them? Because we have to console with them and talk with them. And that is the narrative that we're keeping them there. And these are the people pushing the agenda so that they will make sure and have to ensure that Rowley get back in power to inherit the gas revenue of the dragon gas. And the nice thing about it, we own gas. We have a percentage in our water, our land, and in our space. And we have to negotiate Maduro to sell it. So Rowley know he was selling his slave catchers to change the narrative to ensure, because you know the EDC can't do it again. Because the revised list, when they're talking, if he's talking about 30 years, how could he be 350,000 people at the same time? Wait, everybody's so sensitive. They have to understand what is that before us. We have to get out there, amongst ourselves, and canvas, and make sure that the revised list is formed. See who's already. Look at the project. When we talk about Moruga, the housing development, all of a sudden, in days of man, know how to put housing and house plan. All of a sudden now, see the people who get the low-cost housing in which area? In Moruga. So they're pulling them, and this is the thing we have to talk about. And tell X, why it is now, after 9 years, Rowley and India see it fit to put people in Moruga to build house, and why not people in Point 14 who need houses and Erie, and Digo Martin, and all in Bagatelle. And they're moving people from East Port of Spain, and they're pulling them in Central, in Astonia Park. These are the things we have to talk about. Let other narrative and the slave catchers push the agenda. Because in the end of the day, if I let out ice cream with a waffle cone, when I reach the bottom, what will happen? It finished. And the taste is leaving no more. I want more. So, then the people, these slave catchers, get the taste of the ice cream. So let me wake up that way. Because first to begin, Let me throw out two things you understand, Lennox. Sorry to take so long. Let me throw out two things.
Go ahead.
The sugar workers, the farmer panel, right? In the energy complex. Then the farmers, or the outside, the contract workers and the who they have the land, right? The private people. All of them run behind Rowley Government. With the Kazimo saying, hopefully they will get the money from carrying 1975. Let me talk about that. And the fragmentation. Look at it. Let me talk about that. That is one of the UNT. Let me talk about Philip Alexander joining them, eh? And he talking the narrative, but yet still he will go and put candidate in the TNM stronghold. It's only the UNC. Eh? If it can't spell, who went to the UNC more? They were Maraj. Look around. Eh? Let me talk about what for the UNC. It's we the people, we the supporters. Eh? We'll get this in fragmentation and break it party different group because we don't like the narrative. So if we don't like Kamla or honorable political leader, who we love? The PNM? So it's either we back off from that way, they'll both of us put in a cold storage in Central. You see why? So have a nice night.
Yes, indeed. Well, you see me smiling because you see, the information by itself is good information, well packaged. They are house pattern, etc. But that disposition by itself, the intention, of course, is to enhance the political viability or the political, should I say, fortunes of the PNM. So it is good to know what your enemy is up to. Of course, their calculation is this, that with the first past the post system that we have, the Westminster system, whether you win the constituency by one vote, you win. So they understand that. But this discussion started, of course, with a person like Mr. X. And I want to say that with the information that we know that this government is capable of, and of course supported and buttressed by misinformation and disinformation, making them believe that somehow they have the panacea to win elections, when in fact they are engaged in all kinds of underhand and subversion and gerrymandering in two ways, not in just of the support by the Elections and Boundaries Commission in terms of its misfeasance behavior, but also by the utilization of institutions such as the HDC in order, of course, to house part. That's the only way they could do it. But the fact of the matter is this: armed with all of that, and in spite of all of that, we have been able to demonstrate that X and those talk show hoax and them are really nuisance value. They are really devil's advocate. That's how we must look at it. And there's a third aspect of that to be looked at, and that is we must be able to be discerning and decipher what is real, because there may well be some element. Take, for instance, the house padding, blatant and poignant and in our faces. So what you do in such circumstance, because the government will continue to try to enhance its electoral fortunes, when of course it realizes that, for example, it can rely on EBC. But in spite of all of that, the records will show again, and that's what the hoax and them and people like X and them cannot deny. You see, it was the same X fella who told us, was bellowing the same narrative when we were saying, and including, of course, expert pollsters remember those pollsters in the context of the Tobago elections and its outcome? What they were saying is a close thing, and we were saying 15 all, in spite of Rowley's one. He went to the parliament and increased it unilaterally without, of course, the involvement of the other party that had 6-2. I talk about the PDP. He went there and had 3. And of course, the EBC, not to be outdone, and of course, consistent with their propensity to, of course, try to maintain and to keep the PNM in government by their conduct. Legally, their legal conduct. But it's really and truly, it is a clear case of misfeasance, not malfeasance, misfeasance. And let me tell you the difference between malfeasance and misfeasance. Malfeasance is when, of course, you do an outright illegal act. Outright illegal act that is contrary to your mandate, your portfolio, or what is expected of you. But misfeasance, you do a legal act, but you do it wrongfully. Misfeasance, you do a legal act as the EBC has been mandated to do, to adjust at appropriate and in particular circumstance, boundaries, etc., and to manage, of course, the elections. But engage, of course, in misfeasance, do it wrongfully, as we have seen from the 2015 election petitions that were sent, of course, to the courts that said that they were wrong in extending unilaterally on their own volition the time for election by 1 hour. And we don't know yet how the PNM benefited, because we know from the court documents that Rowley communicated with the chairman of the EBC then, in order, of course, to get that unfair advantage. Whether it will come again, it's almost an impossibility, the way how the UNC has been engaged in what I consider to be eagle eye focus on the PNM and its shenanigans, now that we know who they are and what they're capable of. So I submit to you that these fellas are nuisance value, and they are, of course, devil's advocates. But the outcome of the Tobago elections, when we were saying 15 all, they were saying this kind of nonsense that they're talking, and at the end of the day, the people realize what is happening, and therefore what we did came to fruition. Why am I saying all this in the context of the 2025 or before general elections? I'm saying that Rowley and them could jump high, they could jump low. Once the people, including those on the East-West corridor, who knows, the evidence shows that there is an increasing proclivity, tendency, gravitation towards the UNC along the East-West corridor. I have never seen that, and X and them are jokers in terms of experience and know-how. They have not invented, created anything to, of course, enhance anything. In fact, I want to tell you, about a month ago, firstly, I want to say that people who he would have managed in terms of politics are only UNC people. Is it that a sign that the PNM will not even invite him to manage them, to manage any candidate, whether at the local or national level? So that's one thing. Let him tell you that. But the people who permitted him to manage because they were lured and, of course, maybe fooled by, of course, the old talk, the nuisance value, the devil's advocate scenario. Anybody could talk. Anybody could talk. That is why I say I will defend anybody's right to talk, because this is a democracy. But I will damn well defend my right as well, not only to talk, but to respond to the nonsense that you're talking. So I don't pay it any mind. I would advise you not to do so, because you can't stop it. You can't stop it. He will claim victimization and all of that. What you do, you understand it, and then, of course, you deliver and you ask pertinent question, and therefore fragment and render brittle such arguments. Such arguments that is not nestled in, of course, reality. A fellow like me We'll ask him, well, if the PNM is so unbeatable, if the PNM is so formidable, how come 1986 Territory occurred? How come again they get licks in 1995? How come again they got licks in 2000? How come again they get licks in 2010? And you have to tell me why it is they can't get licks in 2025 or before. Of course, we only have 1 year before that, so we can't go, we can't be in nostalgic. We can't go back, of course, in an anachronistic mood. We have to say, or in a time capsule that reverses. But we could say that in the current year, an election can take place, moving inexorably to 2025. You ask yourself, and then you ask him, and you know they can respond. Why worry? Why worry? What we have to do is to continue, of course, to not only point out these huge holes. It's almost a black hole. No light could emit when, of course, something is consumed. To demonstrate how dunderheaded, how illogical, how, of course, unreal, and how self-serving, and how they argue that which cannot be argued, or they defend the indefensible. They never deny, for example, and I'm being facetious here, that Rowley is a rapist and a pedophile. They never deny that. But of course, let's be more real. They never denied that Rowley did not say that he will not pursue property tax or reduction, of course, in subsidies. And more popularly, they cannot deny that he did not say that he's not closing down Petrotrin. What part of that phrase, what part of that sentence you don't understand? The government is not closing down Petrotrin, and then he went on to say, of course, in case you are opening or closing the fridge, whatever it is, you're now closing the fridge or whatever it is. Let me repeat it. How could they defend that? I ask you, how could they defend that? And any logical thinking person, particularly those in the 33%, and that is why I'm extremely optimistic. Damage? Yeah? Damage? Well, what damage took place in 2020? The PNM went in with 23 seats and came out with 22. The UNC went in with 18 and came out with 19. What does that tell you? In the local government scenario, they went, of course, and they said incumbent rules, and they sit down on the chairman chair. Rondon did that in, of course, the Sangre Grande. What happened on the next occasion when the election cycle came around? And, of course, subsequently, as was the case in August of last year. What happened? What happened in that election when, of course, over 65,000 persons beat the PNM to a frazzle in terms of excess in favor of the UNC? What happened? What happened? Yes, indeed. That is how you logically deduce and know that these fellas are mere, what I consider to be devil's advocate. And you know what a devil's advocate is? And have nuisance value. Nuisance value. They cannot engage in any intelligent discourse, dialogue, on the basis of what I consider to be the hogwash that they speak. The cesspool of nonsense that they emit. So why worry? What we need to do, of course, is to be on the straight and narrow. And I am sure at the end of the day, the policies and programs of the PNM and the pain that it imposes on the people will certainly result for a handsome victory. I am expecting 26 to 28 seats, a constitutional majority for the UNC. and whatever configuration it would have gone into the next elections with, having regard to what is happening today. Gary is on board, myself and others, recognizing that there is a need to rescue Trinidad and Tobago, in spite of, you see, the devil has its imps. They don't call them angels. They don't call them disciples. They call them imps. And we can clearly identify them on an evening with these talk show hoax on them, and on a morning with, of course, a talk show, what I consider to be a self-gratifying, but with a high degree of nuisance value. Devil's advocate at maximum. That being as it may, let's go, of course, and check the reality check again. And let's hear Kevin Ramnarine as he, of course, unfolds the reality of Trinidad and Tobago today, notwithstanding that the promise of heritage will be, of course, a monumental success and focus only on the winning and, of course, export and sale of oil per barrel. 2023 has turned out to be the lowest production ever since 1939, the start, or should I say the year of the Second World War, between 1939 and 1945. Let us not get carried away with emotions and insensitive and dotish ad hominem talk by people who doesn't have the experience. Listen last night, look at last night's program, look at the one before, where you have talent, meeting, of course, plans and programs and understanding of the socio-economic and psycho-cultural problems of the area, for which we focused. And you ain't hear nothing yet. And now start. Many people don't know what you know now. And therefore there should be a spirit of optimism. And render those persons who are not yet on board, because they will come on board, but not yet on board, and because of their recalcitrance, but generating the nuisance value that I referred to earlier. But at the end of the day, they will have to, of course, understand that evil will not prevail over good, or vice versa. Good will always prevail over evil. And once you support that, there is an unwritten rule or law that makes the righteous always victorious. The UNC clearly has demonstrated. People have asked me, why Kamala and they are not as aggressive as the PNM? But there's a big reason, a big difference. The PNM is a coagulated group of criminals and will say and do anything to gain power. The UNC is based on fundamental principles of ethics and right and wrong, and they will not stoop so devastatingly low so as to expose themselves as the PNM has done over the last 9 years, including this year, to widespread and clear. Even a rookie coming out from the training college, the police training college, could not only charge Rowley for misbehavior and corruption in public office, but make the charge stick legitimately, not like these bogus charges that they trump up and try, of course, to do that in order to stay in office. We have a long 2024. Every month in this next 11 more months, this being the 12th, meaning at the beginning and number one, we will be talking and we will be, of course, convincing. Have no fear. Do not allow those who are looking for a listening ear to spew their hogwash, dotishness, and illogical, and what I consider to be square peg and round hole talk. People, of course, it is already 19 past. I know that you want to get more, but let me just conclude with, of course, Kevin and Rabnarine, that will, of course, sum up what you have said tonight.
Let's talk about the energy sector's performance in the last 8 years. Let's start. I'll take you from Chaguaramas all the way to Galiota. Chaguaramas, Republic Bank closed down, Royal Bank closed down, Zanzibar closed down, Massey stores closed down, all because of lower energy sector activity on the peninsula. We go down to Point Lisas, Mita closed down, MHTL M1 closed down, Yara ammonia plant closed down, Titan methanol closed down. We go down to Point Apia, the refinery closed down. We go down to Point Fortin. We now have 3 LNG trains when we used to have 4. And the 3 that we have operating at 65% capacity. We turn around the corner and we go to Galiota. Galiota is a ghost town, right? Because energy sector activity drilling has fallen 63% in 2015 to 2022. Gas production has fallen 30%. Oil production fallen 27%. Employment, persons with jobs in the energy sector has fallen 54% in the last 8 years. So I don't know how that could be construed as a sector moving in the right direction. There is hope on the horizon if we get Manatee. Shell hasn't sanctioned it. Dragon, we don't know when that's going to come. We know the minister signed something, everybody clapped. If I see somebody clapping for something they're not aware of, I might think they're mad. But nobody knows what was signed, and nobody could say when that dragon gas will arrive in Trinidad. So the actuals, we talk about forecasts and we talk about actuals. When you look at the actual numbers published by the Ministry of Energy, gas production is not moving in the correct direction. We've been under 3 billion cubic feet of gas per day since, I think, January 2021. Those plants that are remaining operational in Point Lisas and Atlantic are doing so at 70–80% capacity. So we are in a worrying space. And I'm saying, the message I'd like to get out tonight is that I don't see any sort of reprieve for that narrative I just gave there until 2028.
Yes, indeed. I don't think we need any further analysis. So, of course, what is left is that to tell you, have a pleasant rest of the night. God bless. Don't forget tomorrow morning. Andy, Mikey, and myself, of course, Andy is a bit indisposed at the moment, but Andy and Mikey and myself, and of course, our good technical director, very, very efficient, and of course, in a learning space, but nonetheless, coming up to scratch. I'm talking about, of course, Newbie. He will be with us as well tomorrow morning on the ground report from 6 to 9. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless once again.
We see on the news each day, human lives are blown away. Mothers and fathers crying, burying their dead and dying. How many more, I hear them say. Death is the highest price. Death is the total sacrifice. Yeah, brothers rather commit suicide than continue with apartheid. I just beg me, Father, each day. Tell me, Father, tell me, how many more must die? How many more? How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die for liberty? Well, how many more before you set South Africa free, Mr. Botha? How many more must die? How many more? Mistress Thatcher? How many more must die? How many more? Mr. Reagan? How many more must die? Mr. Botha's answer. Bullets, tear gas, and murder. Every day is a massacre. Then he publicly stated his view. He said, black people like me and you will always be dominated and forcibly subjugated, and will have no say in South Africa. Help we, Father, help we. How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die for their liberty? Well, how many more before they set South Africa free? Mr. Botha, how many more must die? How many more? How many more must die? How many more? How many more must die for their dignity? Well, how many more before you set South Africa free, Mistress Thatcher? South Africa today is just a short fuse away from a total confrontation between the black and white man. We want with freedom, may people say. They have made it very plain. No more turning back again. Freedom is the only answer. No compromise, no surrender. Lord, I see it death in South Africa. Help we, Father, help